Sejam bem-vindos a mais um episódio do Urbanos, Ressonância da Cultura. Hoje vamos ter connosco a Hajer. A Hajer é uma mulher dinâmica que está neste momento em Portugal, veio da Tunísia e começou a sua própria tour cá em Portugal. A tour chama-se Bairro Árabe e é uma tour referente à influência árabe na Península Ibérica. Hoje vamos estar um bocadinho à conversa com ela para que possamos saber um bocadinho mais sobre a sua tour e o que levou a fazer isto e conhecer também um pouco mais a Hajer. It's very nice to have you here, Hajer. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak with people related to new projects that show the multiculturality of this country. Although a lot of people try to erase it, but it's always good. It's since I went to the tour for the first time, I always had this in the back of my mind that I would like to speak to you a little bit more about it in a more specific environment instead of like being on the tour. So this is great for me, and I am very happy that you accepted the invitation to come here. Thank you very much. Yes. So just to give our audience a little bit, like a first introduction. Like you were born in Tunisia and
I was born in Paris. Yes, I was born in Paris, and both my parents are Tunisian, and they transmitted me a lot from their culture, first the language, and I used to spend a lot of time in Tunisia. I think when I was a child, I used to spend at least 3 months a year in Tunisia, but like just to the family, 2 months every summer.
just so you don't lose that.
Like every time I have like school holidays, they would send me to my uncle too. So I spent a lot of time in Tunisia, and thank God, yeah, they transmitted me the language, which allowed me to have also connection wherever I was spending time in Tunisia. And I had this life of a kid of immigrants growing up France. So when you're in the house, it's this kid of Tunisia. You eat the food from Tunisia, you speak Tunisian, you feel you're in there. And when you just go out of home, you're in Paris, and you have to adapt and meet this kind of chameleon all the time. So that's the environment in which I grew up. Like,
So you used to speak so you had to learn like Arabic and French. Like in Tunisia, you
absolutely. So Tunisian is an Arabic speaking country. That's the main language spoken. They still use French as second language. We also have Amazigh people, like it's still a minority, but they also had their own language. So I grew up speaking Arabic at home, but in Arabic speaking countries, you have different dialects. So each country has specificities, and in Tunisia, we have a Tunisian dialect. And even within usually countries, you have obviously different, in the north to the south, and even if you come from the countryside for a big city.
there's always some words that differ from the other.
Absolutely. So my parents are from the north of Tunisia, and I grew up just learning both at the same time, Arabic at home and French whenever I was at school or for activities outside. So that's the mood, I brought up and already like between two poles and
Yeah, always switching on and off between like this like French and like the culture. Even the culture, it's like kind of different. And
absolutely. It's obviously not only about the language, it's also about mastering the codes of a society. Like the codes of French society are very different from the Tunisian society. You have also the perspective on family is very different, the perspective on life, the perspective on like many aspects, So I was navigating all the time, and so yeah, and both are very much intertwined in me.
yeah, because the Western type in French is more of like the Western type of yeah, I get it. And being like the daughter of immigrants born in like a country which was a colonial power who did all of the things that it did. it's always very hard to grow up, because then if you do not, if you're not able to cling to your identity and mold your own identity within, which is like the both experiences that you have from your the country of your parents and the country that you were born in, it kind of tends to be like a difficult, almost like always stepping on eggshells, because you always got to be a chameleon, changing from this to that,
Yeah.
right?
No, thank you for mentioning it, because the fact that France is the former country that colonized Tunisia, actually it adds up a layer of complexity, in this navigation between culture. If I was French and Italian or French and Swedish, it'd be a completely different story. But have like having growing up hearing the stories from not my great grandpas, just my parents. My parents brought in a Tunisia that would still
The colonial.
rule.
Yeah.
Of course, it's very complex and very difficult, and that's. But it's interestingly we are millions to experience this. See, like millions here in Portugal, we had the same with sons and daughters of immigrants from former colonies. So somehow I feel also this big connection to a wider bunch of people who are people who experience this, whether in Spain, in Portugal, in Belgium. So it also somehow linking me to all kind of different people, not just French. These people who experience this thing side of them.
Because it's because mainly on that time, our parents and the generation before our parents, like when there was time to immigrate to some countries, they would usually go to the colonizing country.
It was the easiest because at least
They could the language, yeah, and the customs, some of them, because they were like imposed at that time. But this would be another. Yeah,
but it's all connected.
it's all connected. It's all connected, and it is connected also to the tour that you started, and when you came here to Portugal, I would assume that by the time that you got here, you already had, you knew about the influence of the Arabic influence of here in Lisbon and on Iberia, or did you started to study it when you got here?
Okay, to be very honest, when I was to Portugal, I knew very, very little about the history of the country. Uh, we didn't move, like we didn't just look at them and say, we are going to Portugal. It was a job opportunity on my husband's side. So we moved here without really purposely say, we're going to Portugal. It was like an opportunity. And we said, okay, let's go. I knew so little. I knew about the dictatorship. I knew the name Salazar. I knew.
You're a terrible name to know. Like, look, the first name you. Yeah.
In France, obviously we focus a lot on French history and ethnic France. So we touched a little bit on the rest of European history. So I knew that. And we had people who also were daughters and sons of Portuguese immigrants in France. Because Portugal was also a country of emigration. People left Portugal. And there is a huge Portuguese community in France. So my connection to Portugal was more people than through books or the history of Portugal. But since I'm very curious and obviously I had this interest in history and understanding the geography of territories, etc., very quickly I started reading about it. And it really came to my face as soon as I started learning the language. It really started with the language. I knew there was some kind of influence. We always hear about Spain and Andalusia. We know it less about Portugal. And then I realized that actually the Portuguese language has as much, if not more, influence from Arabic than Spanish. So it came a lot through learning the language to be able to just start a night here. And then little by little, it's like this whole thing, you start pulling.
Because then you started to see like the names that start with all of the things. This is from Arabic, and even the architecture. Here in Lisbon, I think that it's kind of dissolved a little bit. But as soon as you go south, further you go down south, you see the azoteas, you see all of this architecture, even the mosaic and everything gets very, very Arabic.
The azulejos, obviously. Of course, now the Portugal has completely taken this tradition of the azulejo and made something completely different.
Yeah, they whitewash.
Different styles. But when you walk in Lisbon, you still see some patterns of azulejo that you could see in Morocco. Algeria, or Tunisia. Like some of the batters are really inspired cake from the Islamic art. So yeah, you had the azulejo, you had the language, and very quickly I started reading, and I was like, what the hell? Like, how come like nobody talks about it? It's huge. I discovered like this treasure that was sleeping on internet because you do have papers, you have academics who studied it, you still have teachers, medieval historian working on it now, archaeologists, but it's just something we don't talk about, and it's not something that educators, the education system, yeah, is saying a little bit about it, but I think not enough, and sometimes
In a negative way.
yeah, the words used are questionable.
Yes.
So I thought, well, there is so much to do in this little interface between basically the audience, the public, like the general people in Portugal, and this academic world that is very close about on itself, that do this paper, these books that actually, like, frankly, like barely nobody read those. So I tried to put myself in this little space to make all these papers, research papers, I had access to all these books known in a fun and attractive way so people can get interested in the subject. And that's why it's first started on Instagram, because Instagram is so easy. You put a picture, you write a short text. If you make it fun with nice colors, people will read it. It's not as boring as a research paper you find on internet.
With manuals in black and white, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's how it all started. I thought, okay, there's something to do in this space. How to make all this huge, like, immense heritage, Islamic, Arab, unless you're not African, whatever we call it, but not Moorish, please, whatever we call it, known and better understood in Portugal. And that's how it all started. That's how the project Bairro Árabe.
Yeah, which is it's amazing, because there is so many texts. Like there are manuals, several of them. I haven't read them in extent, but I saw, like, I do know, like, the basics of the influence of the Arabic influence of North Africa here in the Iberical Peninsula. But when I went to your tour is when I got, because what in our school, in our educational system here in Portugal, it's just complete. It's just a page. It's not even like, it doesn't make it. It doesn't give it its value. It's just a page in which you say that, like, during this century till this century there was, and then they go immediately to the Reconquista or whatever. So people do not have. For those who are not interested in it, they will not develop, or they will not research it more in order for them to have more information related to it. But for us, and again, touching on that point of being immigrants or sons of immigrants, we tend to be more drawn to this. So we try to understand what was our part in this country in history, not only the one that it's been said to us, but what exactly was, because one of the things that historians do, they don't lie. They put out their papers and their books, and then the educational system removes what they want, so doing this research is very, very important.
I think that, as you said, kids of immigrants who are also very sensitive to the invisibilization aspect.
Yeah.
Because we grew up in family where we hear stories, we know things, and then we go to school like, how come we don't talk about this? How come I've never heard about this at school? I know it from my family, I know it from stories I heard in the village or the town of my parents back home, but how come we don't talk about it? So we are very sensitive to that. And I think we develop a sense of trait to, but to question more what we are taught. And that I realized afterwards, so I was taught history from a French perspective.
You said.
And I was told about the French colonization from a French perspective, but I was hearing a completely different story at home
From the people who got colonized.
for people who really lived there, lived it in their bodies. So of course I grew up with this thing of maybe what I've really what I've been taught and what I'm seeing here is not the full picture. And so I think, yeah, that's also something we have, I think, in particular, is the sensitivity to questioning more the narratives we are given to. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with the Bairro Árabe. It was really to question the mainstream narrative. I give a lot of days and names. And frankly, I'm going to tell you, I don't care. Like, people will maybe remember 5% of the names of these I say. And that's fine. I do it because I have to do it. I want to give context. And I try to use like first-hand sources. We read text together.
Yeah.
But what I want is just people to go out and say, okay, maybe it's not the thing I thought it was. Just have a different perspective, a different narrative, and just question very simple things like the words we use. Even if people after the tour say, okay, maybe I'll be careful, maybe I will stop saying Reconquista. Maybe the term wars is not actually adequate. Maybe there are better words. That's enough. Like, I'm super happy if people go out on the tour with just this, starting to question the words they use and the perspective on El Andaluz. So that was the name of the Iberian Peninsula under Muslim governance. That's enough for me. Like, I feel like the job is done.
Yeah, which is very important because words do have a weight, no? I mean, although right now we are the descendants of it, of the people who were here, um, and so throughout the years it tends to be like something that gets penalized. But people do really need to understand that words have weight. They carry weight, and to some people it might be something normal, but to some people it might be something pejorative. So it might be something that they'll be like, whoa, what I would like. It's not a cool thing to say.
I know that in some countries, I don't feel that this is the case in Portugal, to be frank. I think here, Loro is just, they use it as a show. Because they don't know how to name these people who arrived suddenly in the 8th century.
Because they did not know where they came from.
Exactly. So they say more. I know in Spain it's different. The word has an pejorative, racist. So when people say more here, I know it's kind of a shortcut. But if you really look at history and you understand, it's also, a way to conceal the diversity of all the people who were here. Because the people who arrived, some came from Yemen, some came from today's Syria, some came from North Africa, and were Arabized along the process of the conquest. They were not speaking Arabic at first. They were speaking Al-Tamazight, is their language. So it was a very diverse group of people who arrived. And then it's funny because people would use the word Moors to describe the people who conquered, like this military campaign that started in century. And they will continue calling them Moors as the forehand, I've had till today. And actually, once the Muslims were kicked out and were not in charge politically, we have also this idea, okay, that's it. Like, just to take the example of Lisbon, Afonso Henriques, he conquered Lisbon in 1147. That's it. No, that's not it, because Muslim actually stays in Lisbon, in a place which is now known as Moraria,
Which is also a word that's related to more.
absolutely, it was the space of the Moors, and in that time, in the 12th century, the words became really a synonym of Muslim. They say Oshmorush, you have documents signed by the king saying Ushme, Ushmorush, Fosh, like my free words, and it was just used to say Muslim. So the term has evolved a lot. And what I wanted to say about the term Moors is like, I'm like, who are you talking about when you say Lu? Are you talking which are the people who conquered in the 8th century? Are you talking about those who stayed under Christian ruling? Because this Muslim, when Lisbon was conquered by Afonso Henriques state, they were basically Lisboeta, people under Christian ruling. And there were many Muslims actually all through what we call the Reconquista, which is actually more a Catholic conquest than a reconquest. You had Muslims living all through the Iberian Peninsula.
Till today, actually, and then you see that there's a lot of mosques. There are so many mosques that are still from those from this previous.
Which were converted to churches and then became because it was also this Christian Catholic conquest was not like a very linear process. You had period like on and off, you had times of absolute peace. You have even military alliances between some Catholics and some Muslim kingdoms in the south. You had also a diplomacy exchanges, trade exchanges. We have like documents showing like the king of Castella or Navarra trading with the kingdom of Sevilla, which was under Mavimuli. So there was trade, there was diplomacy. It was not this permanent state of war and religious.
Yeah, nowadays they try to paint it as like it's the same but they always do this in terms of history. So it's in order to like demonize the people, like these were not good people, like we had to do the Reconquista and these are not good people, but that's not true because there was so many trade being made. They introduced a lot of term and cultural terms. There are a lot of things culturally that are still used until this day here in Portugal and in all of the Iberico Peninsula that came from this from all of this parts of the world, North Africa, Syria, Yemen, and I remember this is one of the things that I remember that you said on the tour that I went, that there was actually one king, one situation between an uncle from a caliphate and that they were really trying to make that there was like a betrayal because they were going to do a treaty, but there was a betrayal within the family, right?
Yeah, you had so many stories. Like, if you really dive into the story of El Andaluz, like this time in the 8th century and the fall of Granada in 1492, it's full of these stories. One that I often tell is, just to give an example, there's this figure that I think is not known enough in Portugal. His name is El Muatamat. He was a great poet. So he wrote poetry in Arabic, and he's from Beja. He was born in Beja, which
The solid, yeah, it's all like yes.
and he was a poet. But at that time they were always like we are now. We do many things. He was a poet, but he also became the king of the region around Sevilla at some points, and at some point in Al-Andalus, they got threatened by Amazigh tribes coming from today's Morocco, namely the Almoravids in the 11th century. And Al-Mu'tamad, who had kind of peaceful relationship with some Catholic in the north, tried to seal a deal, indeed, to stop the Almoravids. And the Almoravids are going to come. They're threatening us. We're going to be first, but then they're going to threaten you also, the Catholic and the Lord. So I think it was Afonso VI of Navarra. I said, okay, let's make Leon of Leon and let's make a deal. And El Afonso VI said, yeah, sure, like let's make a deal and fight together against the Almoravid. And in the last minutes, he betrayed me, and let the Almoravids invade El Andalus, and the prophet obviously he benefited from the weakness of El Andalus. These kind of stories like happen countless of times. Sometimes alliances really worked. It would really fight together against another enemy. And sometimes there were betrayals. There were also alliances in the term like marriages. That's one of the famous caliphs, Abdurrahman III. His eternal grandmother was actually a princess of Navarre, so Catholic princess. So he was a quarter, if you want to say Catholic, and he was the Caliph of Al-Andalus. So you had many anecdotes like this. What would really, like from a historic perspective, what would really introduce this idea of war, of religions, of confrontation? Autonomy do Crusades.
The Crusades, yeah.
Because, and it's an external event from Milan, because to understand what's happening in Milan, let us a deeper reference. You always have to zoom out. You always have to zoom out and say, okay, what's happening in other places? Because, sometimes people ask me why it was an emirate and became Caliphate. Say, the Fatimids. Why this is the Crusades? So Iberian Peninsula is not this bubble completely unaffected by what is happening around. It was affected by what was happening further east. The Byzantines were losing power and the Ottomans were gaining.
Yeah, but the Ottomans were also a big Muslim.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so which is the Turkey nowadays. Like it was Turkey.
So always it's what is so fascinating about Atlantic was we tend to really look at.
Isolated, but no, if
But it's connected to everything that was happening in North Africa, further east as well. And yeah, that's why it's so fascinating. And when it's always makes me a bit sad when I see, as you said, you mentioned the history textbook. I think it's in the Szechuan on the sixth grade when they do it, and you have maybe 2 pages.
yeah, not even.
And I'm not saying that, but they should at least like open it up,
Yeah, because it wasn't the way that because even on those 2 pages that they put, the way that they paint it, they paint it as if people came from North Africa, and they started killing and raping and doing. No, it was like it was progressive, and people were speaking, and like even it's like even the story when they tell the story about the colonization and the descobertas and whatever, they tend to glorify it in the way that we went to Africa, we got there and we beat everybody, and no, this is not how it happened. They came with trade, they came with dialogue, they came with diplomacy, and then the backstabbing started and like isolating this and that, and you know because it's impossible for you to go and enter a new territory, even if you have the mightiest power in the world, that you always have to have some diplomacy first, because you need to scout the terrain, you need to first see if you can make some alliances here or there. So so the demonization of people from North Africa came in a sense of like, we need to maintain this integrity, we need to have this our and besides that, the Christianity back then was really, really violent. It was a very, very violent religion at the time, because they had like the Crusaders, and they had like the I don't know, I don't remember, the Templars and all of this, which were orders of knights that they were supposed to kill for faith, which is totally opposed to what it's supposed to be. But yeah, you had this thing, and like, I think that even then they had this way of thinking that it's like, okay, we're gonna lose our identity, which is what propagates racism till today, which is the 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 idea of trying to maintain things pure. So we need to maintain ourselves. We are from here, and they are from there, so we cannot mix. So
that's why the words are so important. You mentioned descobrimento, discoveries. It's the same phonetical question. When I told you the term is really questionable because it's very heavy ideologically to say Reconquista. It entails the idea that basically there was this anomaly happening. It was something absolutely abnormal, which was having Muslim people governing a small part of Europe. This is not normal. This cannot
this cannot happen.
Just-
Cannot allow this.
it's not possible. So we came and we took it back. But, just to give you some reason why this term is really questioned nowadays is first, um, the people who were conquering and founding the kingdom, what would become Spain and what would become Portugal, had very little to do in terms of family linkage with the Visigoths who were kicked in the 8th century. So usually when you say, I'm reconquering the territory, it's the people who were kicked are coming back to reconquer. So first, it's very questionable for this. Then you also have places that did not even exist in the 8th century. Like people who go, usually it's far right people, they go to Granada every January 2nd to party and celebrate the fall of Granada, like the fund of the Catholic to Granada. Granada did not exist in the 8th century. It was founded, Granada as a city, it was founded and that was during the time of the Muslim ruling. There was no Granada before. And it's the same for Madrid.
This cities did not exist.
Exactly. So saying, we're going to celebrate the Reconquista of Madrid, does not even make sense, like, historically. That's why I always speak during the tour of the Catholic conquest, not reconquest. So just to give you an example, and back to what we said, very simple thing without even knowing the dates and the names, just the words. And when I was reading the history textbook, I was thinking, okay, let's keep it to just 2 pages because you have so many things to explain in the program. But at least these 2 pages
Make them
needs to be Good.
Yeah, make them work out.
They need to question, why do we say Reconquista and not Catholic conquest? Who were the Moors? Explain, like, who were they really? That's if I may say, my critics toward this textbook. Okay, you can always improve the length and the richness of what you say, the content, but just do it well. Just use the right word, even if it's only 2 pages, and that would be already a good start. And the same for what you take all its scopies and odd topics of.
I mean, there's you can there are certain college nowadays that have specific degrees on that, which is also is good. But I think that it should start from the base. So it needs a reform. The educational system needs a reform in terms of the program, in terms of the manuals, everything, to be able to be more inclusive. Because nowadays we have Portugal is a country of immigrants, you know, and we have like you go into a classroom. Even me, when I was a kid growing up and I was in high school, I would go into like I would be in class, in a history class. And I would be like, there would be on a class of 20, I would be like 7, 8 black people, and they are teaching us something that does not coincide with the truth. And then I was always like, I would question, because here in Portugal, they have like this big thing in which they tend to say that they were good colonizers. And I'm like, but there's no such thing. If you impose your will on somebody, then
And they abolished slavery the first also.
that's, yeah. But like, it's an oxymoron. Like, how can you impose your will on somebody? So that person is doomed. So you're telling me that that person is doing what you want because she wants to do what you want her to do? Like, doesn't make sense. But this is how they teach us, and it's bad because this way you're like, you feel you're in the classroom and you're like, okay, but okay, so my ancestors allowed this. So my role is to please you, like you, when I say you. So basically, the mindset that they are already inputting into kids is like, this is your role. Like since the beginning, your role was to do whatever we tell you to do. I know. So
It's extremely violent, and
it's
also it
very aggressive.
always put us, I think, in the position of the weak people, because you can also turn to your grandparents and wait off the. But how did you allow that?
Yeah, and then
How?
and it creates a self hate. You start hating your people like, you guys are dumb.
Yeah.
They are the smart ones. You guys are dumb. These guys are weak.
Yeah, the good, the strong, the smart people, and how come you allow this to be done? And I'm not gonna develop on what's going on right now in the world.
Oh my! Let's see. Yeah, it's happening. And it's again aggressively. You can see it in Haza. Like, this is what I see in Gaza right now is exactly what we can say. It's a modern day descobrimento, because they want the land, because they know that the land has the resource. The state that's doing all of this aggression is not it has nothing. As one of the biggest imperial colonialist white supremacist country behind them, which is the United States, and which actually has so much military power, which was won again under, it was after the Second World War, but it was even the Second World War, when it ends, you can see that it was purposefully ended in a way to empower the United States, to weaken the Soviet Union, because all of the ground boots were Soviet that went and got killed. So this depleted their army also. And then you have the capitulation of Berlin, which also got invaded by Russian troops. But when there is a capitulation, the first country to issue pardons to scientists and all of this, or working in the SS, and there were Nazis, was the US. So they brought all of the brain to their country, which was the brain who was developing all of the nuclear bombs and all of this, you know. So they got a leg up on that part. Then you had the Cold War, which was to immediately end the Soviet Union. So it happened, and then they formed NATO, which means that every country that is a NATO member that has a NATO membership has a U.S. base. So now it became the United States of the world because they have bases. They have 135 bases all over the world. How is this possible? So, and people were like, Africa was completely, reconstructing themselves after colonialism, which was one of the things also that after World War II, Russia said, okay, if we are going to do this, like nobody can have colonies anymore. So they stopped the colonies. But Africa was not in any way a threat. And then you had Europe, who was, France, it was completely destroyed by the war. You had the UK that didn't have anything. So the major powers were like the US and Russia and the USSR back in the days. So the United States, they saw the opportunity there to, okay, so now we have two major powers, which is us and the USSR. So we need to destroy the USSR immediately so we can be, and that's what they did with the Cold War. And Gorbachev was a sellout also, so he even did McDonald's commercials and stuff. So this is the level of sellout that this dude is. So they basically took over the world, and their hegemony came till now. And even carving out a part of the world to give to this people that I refuse to mention the name because it was planned. This was a plan also post World War II to carve up a part because it was supposed to be also in Angola. They were studying the best place. And at that time, Gaza or Palestine was under British rule. And like the US were like, we saved your ass in World War II and we need the place to put this thing. So where are we going to put it? We're going to put them here and we're going to, because there was already Jewish people living there, which they were living in peace with, like they were, but then you put a group of people with an ideology, which is the political aspect of it, which is really far right, extremist, and very aggressive, colonial imperialists, and you mix them with the ones who are really from there, and you back them up with the biggest power in the world, which is also imperialist and colonial, and then obviously you put this because people who are colonized, they usually tend to, in the beginning, they don't know what's happened. So they think that because they come disguised that they are sheep and wolves, they're wolves in sheep clothing. So they come as everything is okay. And being people who are used to oppression and everything, we welcome them with open arms. Like, okay, you guys can come here. You scapegoat. But then they show the true face. And
Again, the words are so important because, we always say the British mandates. It's like Tunisia. They always say, the French would say, Tunisia was not a colony, it was a protectorate. Like, you were under section of the French. So yeah, when you just that to, in the history of Portugal, but you're absolutely right, this link to everything we are witnessing now and to the colonization and decolonization movements. The words are so, so important. We have to think things, and it's all about supremacy. Supremacy, the winner, we impose his her own narrative.
and we'll write history in his narrative.
Exactly. That's what we learned then. And so that's why I think, what you're doing is very important. The tour I'm doing also is something I really like to I really enjoy doing it. Like after doing it, I go back home and I'm like, whenever the number of people, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 12. I'm like, okay, tonight there is 3 more, 12 more people who know about it. And it's very satisfactory to have this getting. And I'm sure you have the same when you produce a video content and like, okay, more people now know, more people have heard this.
No doubt.
And that's really like, I feel it's almost the mission of our generation,
It is.
Some mission. Sometimes it's a bit heavy, but I feel like we have to do it.
I didn't think that it would be so urgent, but right now it's really urgent. I mean, we are going down a spiral of misinformation, which is really, it's necessary for us to do what we're doing. It's really necessary. It's heavy.
It's heavy, but heavy is the crown, right? So let's tell the people when they can see your how can they book and
So in the last, I think 6 months ago, I finally have a website. Cook and very easily go just go on internet and do type BairroArabe.com. So I have my website. It's still under construction, but you can through the website you can have as much information as you need to know about the tour, the length of the tour, where we meet, and you're able to book through my website. I still have this Instagram page where everything started. I don't have as many posts as I used to, but sometimes I just drop a piece of information about a word coming from Arabic or a certain event or a certain town where I feel the Muslim heritage is not showed or talked about enough, like Ezora or Coipra. Brazilian, I two posts about Coipra and Ezora that really were very much appreciated. So yeah, Instagram, my website. The tour is basically normally on Fridays, every Friday morning. And upon request, I'm starting to work also with the more groups, nice groups coming from outside of Portugal, just visiting Lisbon, but also some students next north on the level road of students from Peru universities, Pacific, Coisa, Brazil, Turau. So yeah, very happy with that.
that's amazing.
How you can find me.
That is so amazing. It was very lovely to have you here. It was a great conversation. I will bet I'm gonna have to go and do the tour again because I pick up on some stuff, but then there's a lot of things, but I will do it again for sure. And it was very very lovely to have you here, and I wish all of the success, guys. I'm gonna leave all of the information here for you guys to see, for you guys to book, and do Ecos Urbanos. Nós desejamos a todos um bom dia, uma boa tarde ou uma boa noite, dependendo da hora que estás a ver. E nos isso.